Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Georgia K. I am a first year history PhD student at Brown University, and in today's video I want to talk about something that is near and dear to my heart, which is how to get into a program, a PhD or master's program, and go there for free. I know that for me, before sophomore year, I didn't even know that you could go to a PhD program for free, much less go to a master's degree for free. And this is in no way saying these things are easy to do or that anyone can just up and decide a month before applying that they can just go and get a PhD or a master's for free. But with a little bit of thought and a little bit of strategy, it is possible, and I think a lot of people don't know that, so I really want to share that today. So the first thing I want to do is differentiate between the funding structure for master's versus PhD programs. Unfortunately, for master's programs, a lot of times the master's programs are used to get money to fund their research activities, like the university's research activities, so like PhD students. Typically for PhD programs, the program is fully funded. I know that not every program is fully funded, but I do think it is the majority of them that are fully funded in some way in terms of tuition remission, which basically just means that you will not be paying tuition. You might have to pay some admin fees, but that is something that you can negotiate. And then also it means that you will get a stipend of some sort. The stipend varies a lot. It's not always livable, which is very, very unfortunate. And I think some of the things I'll be talking about can help to supplement that in some way. But I definitely think if you are a current graduate student who's just sort of like saw this video title and thought it was interesting, then please advocate for a graduate union. A graduate union is the best thing that will help graduate students to get paid more. And I just feel like all schools should have a union. I currently go to Brown University and we have an amazing stipend and benefits because of our amazing graduate school union. For Brown, we get tuition remission and we get a base stipend of $42,000 a year, but there are additional fellowships that you can get, and there are like additional opportunities within the graduate school that often bump people up a little bit more than that. And then you also get like your health and dental insurance covered. I will say that Brown is perhaps one of the most generous universities when it comes to how they pay their students and the benefits that are included, mostly in part to our graduate student union. Not every school is like that, so it varies from about anywhere from $15,000, which is extremely low and unlivable, to I think the average, especially for like private institutions, is maybe around $30,000, maybe mid-30s. But yeah, so it depends on your lifestyle. For some people, they make it work. Other people, they will find additional opportunities within the graduate school, whether that be taking up additional teaching responsibilities or research responsibilities to supplement their income. Now back to the master's program. Master's programs, usually if you are a competitive applicant, they will include like a scholarship. The scholarship can be like a partial scholarship or it could be a full scholarship. Full scholarships are much harder to come by, but they are possible. They do happen. And in the case if you get a half scholarship versus full scholarship, then there are additional ways to supplement that, and the main ways would be either being a teaching assistant, teaching fellow, which would be basically the same thing if you're a graduate student. Taking additional teaching responsibilities will often give you a little bit more money, and it's good training, especially if you want to continue in academia, but even if you don't, just like public speaking and things like that. Being a research assistant is the second way that you can do that. So working with a professor to help them with their research, or working on a research grant. Research grants often pay relatively well, anywhere from like $25 to up to like $40 an hour, which is really good. And that's a way to supplement, especially if you get a partial tuition scholarship and you need a way to like supplement your income, so that you can live off of additional money. And another way outside of RA-ships, TA-ships, is being a resident assistant. And if you don't know, I was resident assistant for 2 years in undergrad, and being a resident assistant usually takes care of your living costs and also gives you additional stipend. And so if you do that at like a big research university, you'll get free housing, maybe even a meal plan. A lot of times the meal plan is included, and then you'll get additional money, which can vary anywhere from a couple $1,000s to up to like $20,000, depending on the school and the program. So when you are starting your master's application, there are two ways that you can get a really big scholarship for a master's program, and that's one, either an academic scholarship. So if you're a person with a really good track record, then you can do something like getting an academic scholarship if you have a 4.0, or if you have always been a really good student and you excelled, or you are in the dean's list or something like that, then you're qualified for an academic scholarship. And then the second way is like a diversity or sort of a community service scholarship. So if you're a person who's really active in your community, or if you're coming from some sort of minoritized background and you still have a strong academic track record, then that is often a way that you can get additional scholarship money. So typically when you're doing these scholarships, you don't really like apply for them specifically. There might be some scholarships that you can apply for, but in this instance, I'm talking about scholarships that are sort of like just pulled out of the general applicant pool and nominated for certain scholarships, because those are often the biggest scholarships that a program will have to offer. So whether those are academic or like diversity scholarships, you just have to cater your application that your application is going to be such a standout application that they're going to pull it from the applicant pool. And some of the ways that you can do this is, one, start your application early. So if you are planning to apply to graduate school the following year, you should start immediately, like ASAP. Start drafting your statements, looking at the requirements, and especially if there is a diversity statement, a statement of purpose, those two things are what will get you scholarships. So making sure that when you think about especially like a diversity statement, don't think about just like the cookie cutter, you are a person of color, or you're a woman in STEM, or whatever. Like those things, I mean, unfortunate to say, there's like a lot of people who are coming from those backgrounds now who are seeking those opportunities. And so you really do have to think more critically about like what specifically about your background could help your work. And it's really, and I think this is a part that people often get lost in the sauce, especially when they're applying for diversity scholarships or academic scholarships. Everything relates back to your work. So if you are coming from a specific background, how does that lens help you to apply sort of like how you move through academia, whether that's how you interact with other students, how you interact with faculty, or how you are going to do your research. And especially if you're in a master's or doctoral program, you always want to keep that top of mind. And the same thing for your statement of purpose is just show that how your background is going to help enhance your work in some way. So for my diversity scholarship, I did talk about how being someone who is like neurodivergent, learns differently, how I've used that to sort of like empathize with students, especially when I'm a teaching assistant or I'm in any sort of role in education. I really try to understand that people come from different learning backgrounds, because I myself come from a different learning background. And so think about things like that. Like it would have been so easy to just talk about being one of the very few Black women in history or whatever, and that is a very valid thing to talk about, but I feel like you really want to get specific in how your specific background will help you. And that was what helped me to get additional fellowship money for my educational experience, and obviously helped me not to have to take out loans, even though I was pretty covered by like the amount that I got. And so yeah, so just make sure that when you're working on your statement of purpose, to start them early, get multiple drafts, do reviews, and think critically about what you can bring to the table, and make sure that that is shown in your application materials. And that is one way that you can get scholarships. Once you get your funding offer for a master's or PhD program, then you have to figure out, okay, what are you going to need to make up the difference for? So for a master's program, that's typically when you'll need to make up difference. So if you get a half tuition scholarship or full tuition scholarship, now it's when you get to work. So if you get a partial tuition scholarship, you want to make sure that, especially for a master's program, I would recommend applying to as many programs as you physically can, because that will give you more leverage to negotiate for a specific school. So if you get like a half tuition here, maybe like three quarters of your tuition for another school, then you can go back to the other school and be like, hey, can you give me a little bit more than that? And so you can leverage your offers against each other. Just send emails letting people know that you're considering different programs, and that basically whatever school can help you the most financially will be the school that you end up going to. And same for PhD programs. I do think that can help. you probably won't need to do that as much, but definitely if you considering how low stipends can be, it does not hurt to apply to more programs so that you might have more offers that you can use to compare and make sure that you're getting the best livable stipend for your situation. And so yeah, so once you've done all the things, focused on your diversity statement and statement of purpose, show how you can be a standout applicant in those, start early, get reviews, and then you finally get your offers and you have enough offers to pit against each other and to make sure that you're sort of like negotiating the highest bidder. Then you can think about, okay, how are you going to cover living expenses? Because some master's programs, they'll give tuition, scholarships, or maybe even tuition remission if you're extremely lucky, which basically just means that they will pay, they will waive your tuition fees, but you'll probably still not be getting a stipend because stipends are usually reserved for like researching students, and master's programs are often, they don't consider their master's students as researchers in a lot of ways, even though a lot of times they are. But in those cases, then you'll go back to the options that I mentioned previously, which is becoming a resident assistant. And the sooner you reach out to your graduate department about this, or even your residential life office, the better you are, because a lot of people know about these opportunities and will go for them relatively quickly. So being a resident assistant, being a research assistant for a faculty, it doesn't even have to be a faculty who's doing direct research in something that you're researching. It can just be a faculty member that needs researchers. So being a research assistant, and then also being a teaching assistant. And usually you can start TAing within your first year of a program. Some programs have limits on that, but most programs allow you to do that. So if you do need like that additional cushion, those are some ways that you can do that. And then lastly, the last way to do that is to be an administrative assistant in an administrative office. This, I feel like, is perhaps the one that doesn't pay as well, because they typically, like, undergraduate and graduate students can do this. I would, if you were looking for ways to have like livable money, I would go in the route of like research assistant, teaching assistant, because those often get paid more. But if you're like on a pinch, then being an administrative assistant usually will pay okay, and that can help to supplement your income so that you don't have to take out loans or anything while you are doing a master's program. Okay, and now back to PhD programs and just generally understanding the funding structure of a PhD program. So for a PhD program, usually if they're fully funded, that doesn't always mean that you won't need extra money. So especially if a program is fully funded, but they don't cover summers, or they fund people for like 3 or 4 years, but the average person takes like 5 or 6 years. So you know that if you do need 5 or 6 years, then you're going to need extra money. These are things to consider when you're getting your offer, because these are things that you can negotiate. And please, if you are a PhD student or even a master's student, always consider your offer and negotiate. Like, even if you feel like you're getting the best offer in the world, which I did, I still like made sure that I understood the terms of what I was signing up for. I understood like the different pots of money. Just get clear on your finances when you're like thinking about your offer. So once you get your offer, really think about it and reach out to them and say, hey, like, I've noticed that the program people usually graduate in 5 or 6 years, but you offer 4 years of funding. And if you make a good argument, then typically you can get additional money or something in writing for them to say like, okay, if they don't have it, is there another department that has it? Or how do other people do it? How do other people fund that extra year or whatever? And decide if you might want to apply for like external fellowships, but understanding that those aren't guaranteed. So just really think about the sneaky ways that a full tuition or a fully funded program can actually end up costing you money out of pocket, because the best thing to do is try to graduate not having to take out any money at all, which I feel like is a little bit easier in a PhD program if you do your due diligence and reach out, ask questions, and be persistent in making sure that all your needs are taken care of before you accept your offer. A PhD program, when it comes to funding, there are different ways that you can be funded. So whether that be teaching assistants or on a fellowship, sometimes a combination of both. You might have a year or two of fellowship where you're not obligated to teach, or you might have all your years as a teaching assistant, which I feel like is a little bit more difficult to get your work done. But then you do, even the most generous program will usually have a year or two of teaching, which means that you'll either be teaching your own course or being a teacher assistant for like another course, which means that you'll be assisting another teacher, another professor, get their work done, doing some grading, things like that. And get clear on that, because if you have a lot of teaching assignments, that usually means you won't have as much time to do your own work, which can be difficult. So you also want to think about how long that program is going to be if you do have like a lot of external obligations outside of your research, because that is also another financial liability. Because if you take too long, then you might run out of the guaranteed funding that they say they have for the department. Okay, so just to wrap up, those are just some ways that I've been thinking through to share with people. I know that some people know this information, other people don't, but it is totally possible to go to a PhD program and not have to take out loans, and it's fully possible to go to a master's program and not also have to do that. You just have to get creative about the ways that you put your funding offers together and ways that you seek additional opportunities within school to get funding, because I know that especially in the US, student loans are such a big deal, and going to these programs, there's people who know this information and it's sort of like gate kept or behind closed doors, because people don't know that there's so many different ways that you can combine funding so that you can basically go to school for free and not have to have so much financial burden. So yeah, so if you have any additional questions, specific questions about my program at Brown or other schools, or just general advice for anyone else who's in this video looking for ways to fund their education, please put in the comments below. I will be interacting with you guys down there. I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye.